what's the word? Consolidators.
Exactly,
Idea.
exactly. So, Maham, as Aslan stated, there are two phases in your preparation for your exam. The first phase is the learning phase, where you just go over the concepts, you read your course material, you watch videos online, you attend the lectures, and you just understand the key concepts which you will be tested on the exam day, right? But that's only one component of your preparation. The next very important component of your preparation is the practice phase. The practice phase involves solving past papers, taking quizzes, and reviewing your course material in case you have forgotten something. So that is really important because in all Cambridge examinations, the questions are really tricky, see, but the key is to solve as many past papers as possible, as many question banks as possible, so that so that you're well aware or well acquainted to the different ways in which an examiner can throw a question at you and can test the same concept in a different way, right? So I hope you're getting so far. हम क्या किसके बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, महम?
Yes.
Yeah, सही है. So I'll be asking questions बीच बीच में ही. ठीक है. We can have a Q&A session at the end. So just keep writing down all of your questions. अगर कोई भी questions हो. But after like finishing a unit, like a sub-unit, I will ask you guys to unmute your mics, and if you have any questions, you're free to ask them. Okay, but बीच में भी you can interrupt me and ask away. Okay, I have no problem. क्योंकि मुझे इस तरह से नहीं पता चलेगा कि किसका कोई question है कि नहीं. Okay, so let's begin with the first unit. That's the states of matter. Okay, so in this unit. Okay, so this is our unit content. So I've taken this picture from your uh, official PDF, which I downloaded from the Cambridge website. And this is your first unit, states of matter. So it's divided into two subunits. And the first part covers the different states of matter, solid, liquids, and gases. You can just read the different learning objectives and what you'll be covering in this subunit. And then the second unit is diffusion, okay, in which you're required to learn the definition of diffusion and explain it in terms of the kinetic particle theory, which will be going on, which we will be going over very soon. And then you are also expected to describe and explain the effect of relative molecular mass on the rate of diffusion of gases, which we will be going over in very much detail in this lecture. Okay, so let's start with our lecture. So first of all, what is the definition of matter? Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. This is the universal definition of matter. ठीक है? और जहाँ पे भी आपसे अगर कोई भी पूछे, if anyone asks you, what is matter? So it is anything that has mass and occupies space, right? Now, matter makes up everything around us. ठीक है? It makes up your the chair you're sitting on. It makes up your laptop. It makes up your food that you eat every day. It makes up you yourself as well. The human body is made up of matter. The air you breathe, the pencil you're holding currently, the pages that you write on, it's all made up of matter. Okay, but matter exists in three forms, okay, or otherwise known as the states. So there are three states of matter. We have solids, liquids, and gases. These are the general states of matter. Other states of matter have been discovered, for example, plasma. But at this level, you're required to know only three states of matter that are solid, liquid, and gases. And we will be going over the properties, and we will be discussing the differences between the solids, liquids, and gases. Okay, so as you can see in the picture here, the solids contain molecules which are really tightly packed together, and they don't really have a lot of space to move around. Whereas in liquids, the molecules have some space to move around, but they're still really close together. Whereas in gases, the molecules are really far apart and they don't really have a very strong intermolecular forces, so they're really, really, free to move about. Okay, so First of all, we'll go over the kinetic particle theory, which is a very important component of O-levels chemistry. So kinetic particle theory basically explains the behavior of matter in different states, and it has certain points that you need to remember. Okay, you need to learn these points by heart. Okay, because you are tested on kinetic particle theory. Okay, so the uh, first point of kinetic particle theory states that all matter is made up of tiny particles. ठीक है? अब particles जो है ना particles की definition particles की जो meaning है ना वो different हो सकता है. Particles can be atoms, they can be molecules, or they can be charged or otherwise known as ions, right? So जो particles है ना उनकी like meaning different हो सकता है. Like they particles can exist as separate atoms, right? For example, oxygen atoms existing separately, or maybe metallic atoms in for example, if you consider a rod of iron, okay, so there are iron atoms separately existing, and it can also exist as molecules. Molecules क्या होते हैं? What are molecules, Rafi?
मॉलिक्यूल्स वो बेसिकली मॉलिक्यूल्स में जिस तरह मैटर के अंदर होते हैं मॉलिक्यूल्स, जिस तरह सॉलिड लिक्विड एंड गैस में मॉलिक्यूल्स होते हैं।
Yes, yes, exactly. So basically, जो particles है ना, उसमें मैंने आपको बताया कि either the particles can exist as single atoms, ठीक है, जैसे मैंने बताया कि if you have a rod of iron, for example, so there will be iron atoms, separate iron atoms, right? But molecules जो होते हैं ना, they are basically a combination of atoms, ठीक है, जब atoms bond करते हैं ना आपस में, सही है, when, for example, oxygen bonds to hydrogen, two hydrogen atoms, it forms H2O. So the H2O is not known as an atom. Now it's a molecule because it consists of more than one atom. ठीक है? Now molecule जो हो सकता है, it can be either a compound, ठीक है, or it can be an elemental molecule. If it contains two of the same types of atoms, for example, oxygen gas is O2, right? So it's an elemental compound, right? But uh, if that uh, if that molecule consists of two different types of atoms, for example, in water, which contains hydrogen and oxygen, so that is a compound, right? Up either these particles can be charged, so yeah, or they can be uncharged. Okay, most of the times they exist as uncharged particles, but if they are charged, so they are known as ions. सही हो गया. अच्छा, the second point is that the particles are in constant motion, means they are always moving around. Okay, and because they're moving around, they have energy in them, and the energy which is possessed by moving particles is known as kinetic energy. Okay, but in different states of matter, the motion of the particles is different. For example, in solids, the motion of the molecules or the particles is really, really limited because they are so jam-packed together. They don't really have so much room to move around. As you can see in this picture, solids, they are very jam-packed together and they don't really have a lot of room to move around. But all molecules have some kinetic energy within them. Okay, they have some energy. So in solids, instead of like waddling around, they will vibrate. Okay, and they will vibrate and they will rotate around their fixed axis. Okay, so for example, liquids में ये वाले जो particles हैं इधर उधर जा रहे हैं ना, like this particle can move here and there. काफी ज्यादा आप movement का room है इसके अंदर. But in solids, particles don't move around. Okay, they will vibrate. Okay, and they will rotate around their own axis. ये हम देखेंगे बाद में, सही है. Liquids may particles move freely, but they stay close together. And in gases, the particles are so far apart so they can move freely and rapidly in all directions at very high speeds. Uh, the Another point of kinetic particle theory is the energy of the particles is related to the temperature. So basically, as the temperature rises, the particles will gain kinetic energy and they will start moving faster. Okay, we will go over this in detail abhi aage wale slide mein. There are forces of attraction between particles. These forces are stronger in solids. And that's why the solids में आपको नजर आएगा कि solids में all of the particles are so jam packed together because The intermolecular forces are so strong, so they hold all of the particles together. Uh, and they are relatively weaker in liquids, and they are weakest in the gases. सही है? So far so good. अभी तक समझ आ रहा है सब कुछ?
Yes. जी.
ठीक है, सही है, perfect. Okay, so moving on with the kinetic particle theory. So particles are far apart in gases, closer in liquids and packed tightly in solids. हमने पहले से कर लिए point, तो उसको हम फिर से नहीं discuss करेंगे. The movement and spacing of particles changes during the state changes. For example, when heated solids melt into liquids, liquids evaporate into gases. When cooled, gases condense into liquids, and liquids freeze into solids. ये हम सब discuss करेंगे, but these are some points of kinetic particle theory that you need to remember. सही है? इसमें कितने points है? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 points. सही हो गया? So ये आप लोगों ने बस याद रखने हैं दिमाग में कि kinetic particle theory basically explains the behavior of particles in different states of matter, to put it simply. सही है? तो ये आप लोगों ने बस याद रखना है. अच्छा, now moving on to the next segment of our session, states of matter. States of matter. So कितनी states थी matter की? There are three states of matter: solids, liquids, and gases, right? अच्छा guys, अगर मैं बहुत तेज जा रहा हूँ ना तो मुझे बोल देना, ठीक है? कि मेरी आदत है, मैं बहुत तेज 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 बोलता हूँ. अगर मैं तेज जा रहा हूँ, एट एनी पॉइंट इफ यू गेट सैचुरेटेड या कोई क्वेश्चन है तो प्लीज प्लीज डू आस्क. राइट. सो स्टेट्स ऑफ मैटर. तो देयर आर थ्री स्टेट्स ऑफ मैटर: सॉलिड, लिक्विड एंड गैस. राइट. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट्स talk about particles in solids. Right. What is the behavior of particles in the solid state of matter? So in the solid state of matter, there are very strong forces of attraction between the particles, and the particles are arranged really regularly because they are so strongly bound together. So they form a structure known as a lattice. ठीक है, lattice क्या होता है कि lattice is a very organized structure. ये structure यहाँ नजर आ रहा है ना आप लोगों को, wait and this. हाँ, this structure which you can see here, this is known as a lattice. Very regular arrangement. ठीक है, इसको लैटिस कहते हैं. And because they're so, the intermolecular forces are so strong, they're so tightly bound together, that's why they regularly arrange themselves into organized layers, and this is known as a lattice structure. ठीक है. अच्छा, फिर उसके particles will vibrate. As I told you earlier, particles will vibrate but do not move from their position. सिर्फ they just हल्का हल्का vibrate करते हैं and they just rotate around their own axis, क्योंकि obviously they don't have really a lot of room to move. So particles will just vibrate and they will not move from their position. And this results in a fixed volume and shape. So in solids, there are very strong forces of attraction. And because there are strong forces of attraction, so the particles are very tightly bound together, and they'll form a lattice structure as a result. And because they're so close together, they don't have a lot of room to move around. So they will just vibrate and just rotate around their own axis, and as a result they have a very fixed volume and shape. So yeah, so that's about solids. Let's move on to liquids. So liquids may sub states of matter kana, in all states of matter you will describe all states of matter in these terms. Okay, the forces of attraction, the volume, the shape, the compressibility, the kinetic energy. In इन्हीं terms में describe करते हैं हमेशा solids, liquids and gases को. ठीक है, जब भी आप इनमें differentiate करने लगेंगे, so you'll always describe them in terms of their attractive forces, their pattern of arrangement, their volume, their shape, and if they can move around freely, right? So weaker attractive forces than solids, that's why they can move around. No fixed pattern, they will take the shape of their container. So what does this mean? For example, if you pour a glass of water in a glass that is cylindrical, so that water, that volume of water will take the shape of the glass, right? But what will happen if you accidentally knock off that glass of water? क्या होगा वहां?
The liquid will change shape again.
Yeah, it will change the shape again. Because पहले वो glass में था, ठीक है? So it will just it just took the shape of its container. But if you just knocked off that glass, it will just spill on the floor. And because there is nothing to contain that liquid, so it will take a very irregular shape. But For example, if it was possible to just scoop up all of that liquid and fill it in a bowl, so yes, in a bowl, it will take up the shape of the bowl, right? So because liquids जो है उनमें जो attractive forces हैं they are very weak, इस वजह से molecules can just slide over each other and just rearrange themselves to take the shape of their container, right? So that's how and that's why there's no fixed pattern of arrangement in the liquids. If you can just recall, what was the pattern of arrangement in solids, Aslan?
The lattice
What
pattern.
exactly lattice pattern. Very good. So uh, particles can slide past each other. We already discussed that. And result क्या है? There's a fixed volume but no fixed shape, right? So fixed volume क्यों है इसका? Why is there a fixed volume? Because uh, liquids में जो molecules हैं, when you pour the liquid in a glass, it will take the shape of the glass, and that has a fixed volume, right? If you'll pour the same glass into a bowl, which can contain that liquid, so it will take the shape of that. It will take the shape of that bowl, but the volume of that liquid will be the same, right? So it has a fixed volume but no fixed shape because liquid ke molecules are sliding over each other, and they'll just rearrange themselves to fit into the container. Let's move on to gases. Gases में the intermolecular forces are negligible. ठीक है? अब इसमें ना एक जो लोग इसमें misconception करते हैं ना, there's a huge misconception is कि gases में there are no intermolecular forces. That's wrong. ठीक है? Gas के molecules होते हैं ना, they are weakly attracted to each other. ऐसा नहीं है कि बिल्कुल भी attraction नहीं, they are weakly attracted to each other. So, gases, they stay in the form of a cloud. So, yeah, kind of like a cloud, if you get what I mean. Other, for example, if you talk about the gases like the molecules they have a very weak force of attraction. So but they'll just form a cloud, sort of a cloud, and just try to stick together. But for example, if you take this container, if you try to pour that gas in a container, what do you think should happen? For example, if I try to transfer this gas into this container, what should happen? So
Split out or
yeah,
rather
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Azan, can you just repeat what you just said?
Depending on how dense it is, it might float out or it might stay at the bottom of the container.
Exactly. So if the gas is really dense, it will stay at the bottom of the container, but it will not take up the shape of the container. It will just just float at the bottom like this. It's not supposed to float करेगी gas ना, but it will just stay down. It's that. It will not necessarily take up the shape of the container, right? But if the gas is really dense, sorry, if the gas is like has a really low density, so the gas will just spread throughout the container or just try to escape the container. ठीक है? So ये चीज होगी. So gases जो है they
Quick
don't have a
question.
fixed volume, or they don't have, and they also do not have a fixed shape. सही है? Yeah, exactly. So ये हो गए particles and gases. This is a
Wait, I
really
actually
good
have a
thing.
question.
Yeah.
What's an intermolecular force?
Okay. So intermolecular forces जो होती है ना, अब for example, that's a really good question. सही है, we discussed this yesterday. So जो भी matter है, matter में it consists of particles, and that particle can either be an atom, it can be a molecule, or it can be an ion. Okay. Up the forces of attraction that exist between the particles in the matter. For example, if you just label this particle right here A, and this particle B, and this particle C, and this D, right? So the force of attraction that exists between these particles is known as the intermolecular force, right? This is known as the intermolecular force. Similarly, and intermolecular forces are the strongest in solids. But in liquids, on the other hand, they're relatively weaker. Okay, they're relatively weaker, and this is the greater two sign here. And in gases, they are the weakest. So the forces of attraction between these molecules are called as the intermolecular force. सही हो गया? Hope that clears it. समझ आ गया जान आपको?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So this is a table that shows that just summarizes the differences between solids, liquids, and gases. Okay, in a very concise form. Basically, whatever I discussed over the past 10-15 minutes, वो इस table में summarize it. Okay, so if you guys just you know memorize this table by heart, if you just learn this by heart, you basically you can say that you have mastered the states of matter. Okay, so you can see that uh, the differentiating parameters between the different states of matter are the density, the arrangement of particles, the movement of particles, energy, and these are just pictorial representations of how molecules or particles behave in different states of matter. Okay, so that ends our first segment. If you have any questions, Azlan, Rafi, or Maham, you're free to ask.